Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. And today we have some tidbits, some information for those of you who like to tinker in your home or who want to just know more of what to do when you do something electrical. I don't know about you, but I've had my times where I tried to do something and ended up frustrated with wires all over the place, sometimes getting a little shock here and there, and wishing I had called the electrician. So today, we're going to give you some information that will help you to avoid those nuances, those things that happen, and those ailments that we all want to avoid. So today, engineer, if you can put our guest on the screen, is Mr. Brian Duffy. And if you put his pictures on the screen, please. There we go. There's Brian up on that roof. And Mr. Duffy is a master electrician with 27 years of experience in the electrical field. 14 of those years were spent apprenticing, working, and gaining invaluable education with other electrical contracting companies, and the 13 remaining years spent as the founder and chief executive officer and director of Duffy Electric, a flourishing residential electrical contracting company here in the New York metro area. As a native of Dublin in Ireland, Mr. Duffy is certified to perform electrical work in the UK, Ireland, and England. And he later emigrated to the United States, seeking further growth, and he became licensed in Massachusetts and New York, working in Suffolk and Nassau County, and all 5 boroughs of New York City. Duffy Electric is a residential renovations expert with extensive experience working in 100-plus-year-old homes. And we have many of those on Long Island that we want to preserve. He has a strong sense of community, and Mr. Duffy is focused on excellence in the services delivered by his company. The main ingredient at Duffy Electric has yielded such successes that he's been able to honestly and with integrity help others. And his passion exudes through all the crew and staff of his company here in New York area. Mr. Duffy is also a humanitarian and has donated much of his time and also his economic resources to helping the Long Island area with study technology, with spiritual calmness, and other things that he'll go into in the show. So engineer, if you will, please, let's bring Mr. Brian Duffy onto our Time for Truth show. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Ben. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you. And we'll get right into it because I know there are a lot of guys out there like me who zapped themselves or gotten very frustrated with ceilings coming down. They thought it was going to be an easy job. So first I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to start out in this electrical field?
Yeah, when I was younger, I really didn't have much affinity for school and like sitting there and studying. I really just couldn't do it, and I wasn't getting anything out of it. So, being a good Irishman, you either go to college or you get a trade. you know. So, in some countries you go to college, you go to the military. In Ireland, you go to trade or you go to college. And off I went. And my mother said, well, the best trade is, she had some of her family in the electrical trade, so she recommended the electrical. And I said, I'll give it a shot. And I liked it, and that was it. I actually worked my first year for free, without pay. My mother actually supported me. She gave me £20 at the time. We have euros now. We have pounds at the time. Bought me bus fare and cigarette money. And, I went in and I just started to learn, and just, it became something that I really like to do.
Well, it's funny. That's pretty much, I guess, like all of us start. We start out with nothing, and we have a dream, and we invest in the dream, and now you have your company there, in the Long Island area. I wanted to ask you, because I'm sure you were laughing as I was introducing the show, what are the common electrical pitfalls or hazards that we run into in our homes?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. And like, I have been in many homes all over Long Island, New York City. I mean, some of the common things is like, one thing that I see a lot that me and the inspectors, and we talk about, is like extension cords. People like want to pile up outlets into one outlet. And, we get a lot of calls like that where these things melt, go on fire. There's wires running through people's bedrooms, through the doors. The door gets hit and hitting the wire. These things can be, I think it's one of the number one home fire cause. So, the code, in our electrical code, they say, that they have, codes in there to have enough outlets in a house because of that reason. So when you build a new home, like obviously in the 50s when a lot of Long Island was built, that wasn't the case. But, today we've learned from these mistakes. Plus, we use a lot more electricity today than before. So yeah.
Interesting. So I would assume probably that happens because the homeowner is trying to save money, and then is using these electrical extension cords, and I can see that being a big hazard. I'm curious, what happens? Have you run into when they try to hang up a fixture or they wired it incorrectly? What do you suggest for those Fixit men back at the house who are trying to wire things?
Yeah, one thing we just got through with summer, but one thing we come across a lot is like ceiling fans. People try to replace a ceiling fan in, say, a kitchen. There's an existing light fixture that's just rated for £20. Like the electrical box in the ceiling is only rated for about £20. So those screws that hold everything up onto the ceiling, gravity's pushing everything down to the center, are not rated for a moving ceiling fan, which is a much heavier fixture than a regular light fixture. So you got to put like a special fan rated box, and that's something a lot of guys cheat on, and those ceiling fans are twirling away, and then one day, wham, it's on the ground, which is a really dangerous thing. It can really hurt somebody.
I can imagine. The other thing I was going to say is that's quite a hazard, because luckily that ceiling fan may just go to the ground, but if it's rotating, spinning, and if somebody's there, that could be quite a problem.
Right, and it's just extra work and harder to do and costs more. But this is the rules, the building code rules, the electrical rules, and this is, as a licensed electrician, this is what I'm instructed to do, and I'm liable if I don't. So we do it.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a question. What do you feel are some jobs that the homeowner who's trying to maybe do it themselves, save some money, or the apartment owner or the condo owner, and what jobs do you feel, okay, you can do these, don't worry about it, this is fine, but what jobs should they hire an electrician for?
Yeah, I mean, in the city of New York, like, it's much stricter. And really, you're just not allowed to do anything yourself. Now, as you come out to Long Island, there are changes in our codes, like where, you've got Town of Hempstead, Town of North Hempstead, Town of Oyster Bay, which are the three biggest townships in Nassau. And then, and then the further you go out, it's like the less stringent it is. And if you go upstate, it's like, when the whistle blows, it's anything goes. So really where a lot of the more enforcement comes and starts from the city, and then it spreads out. But like, you could change a light switch. Look, I've had many people just say, I tried to change the switch and I just can't figure it out. And I need you to come out and fix it. Like, I can't do it. And I'll come out and it takes me 5 minutes. And, we'll charge for that call. And they're like, God, so much money for 5 minutes. But yeah, I just spent 27 years mastering this craft. And I make it look easy. So does Tom Brady when he throws the ball down the field. But he just spent 20, 30 years mastering that craft every day. So that's what people don't see. And they say, oh, you shouldn't get paid this much. Well, man, you didn't see the last 27 years. I was up at 6 a.m. every morning. So this is, I don't have these conversations, but this is the reality of the situation. You get a professional. He didn't just wake up one morning with that professional certificate. He had to work.
Absolutely. It brings up an interesting point because, as you know, I'm a dental implant and gum surgeon for 41 years now. And so sometimes people come in, they're in a lot of pain, and we have to remove their tooth, unfortunately, and graft some bone. And we do it very efficiently because after 41 years, we do it, like you said, you have a lot of experience as you do. And sometimes they'll say something, and I'll joke with them, and I'll say, well, this reminds me of a comic strip where the doctor's there and the patient goes, look, he's looking at his watch. And he says, Doc, that was only 10 minutes. And he goes, don't worry, it's okay. If you want, next time I can go a little bit slower, and you can feel more before everything goes off.
That's right. That's right.
And the patient goes, no, it's okay, Doc, I'm just teasing. But I'm curious, what should the viewers out there ask of an electrician? Here you are in the business. So what should they ask of the electrician so they know if they are hiring one that they're getting someone reputable?
It's a very good point. I'd say the most common thing, what I noticed as I was going through my trade and in the earlier years, what I noticed is the customer, every customer, almost 100% of my customers would have a horror story of the last electrician. And it wasn't always the customer, it couldn't have been. It was 100%. I swear, it was like 99%. And I was listening to this because, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. The last guy was a nightmare, and they tell me as I'm working. So I started to what is going on here? And at that point, I just didn't know. I was new in the country. I was in Boston. To be honest, I really didn't know. I was beginning my adventure, and I was learning what the scene is, and in construction. But in all professions, you have a situation where you've got criminality, and you've got people who don't understand their business. That's what I found. That's what I found, and for me, what I found is, we can talk about it like L. Ron Hubbard technology, like study technology, is part of being professional is really understanding the terminology and the words in your trade and clearing them up. You gotta work at that. So, that's what I've done with my business, and that's what we're doing. Really, there's a reference that Mr. Hubbard says. It's called hat, meaning put someone's hat on and teach them how to do it rather than hit them. It's called hat, don't hit. When I was starting the trade, I was really hit. I wasn't trained. Like, it was more like, force, and not like, hey, is there something you don't understand about this? Like, what does this mean? And someone really spot checking me on what I'm supposed to know. So this is what we do, and this is the culture in Duffy Electric, and it's a totally new thing. I tell you, it's something that's not. It's foreign to this area.
Interesting. So what you're saying is, at your company, you use a new way of training your employees.
Definitely, yeah. Using a thing called study technology, which is developed by a guy called.
So what is study? By the way, if you move back just a little bit from the screen, that's perfect. That's beautiful. So continue. What is this study technology?
So study technology is a way of learning, a way of studying. And, it like Mr. Hubbard isolated 3 barriers to study. And one of them being the most important was the misunderstood word.
Okay.
And when a person has a misunderstood word, his mind goes blank. Like, he gets to the bottom of the page and he goes, what the heck was I reading? It used to happen to me all the time in school, all the time. And man, I'm still, working on this, but I ended up taking a course that Mr. Hubbard wrote. Like, they covered this technology. I took an introductory course first, and then I took like a more professional course called Student Hat, which is basically how to be a student. It's like a successful student. And when I took that course, that's when I started to take off. Now I realized I could learn things. And that opened the gates to success. Like, I wasn't held back by that barrier. Before that, it was a lot of winging and a lot of tough, kind of. It's still not easy. It's not like you're a walk in the park, but you still, it's a much better situation and much more successful as a result of that.
I see. And so how is it that you apply this within your business with your employees? I mean, because I'm sure you get people come in and some have this experience, some have that level of experience, some have ideas on how to do it, but you want to improve their quality. So how does this study technology, how do you implement that in your training of your employees?
Right. So I developed like drills that we practice. And what the drills are is they're like simple drills that I learned out of the Student Hat. Like, so we will go over basic definitions. What is the definition of voltage? This would be a brand new guy, What is the definition of current? These are, electrical terms, and then I define them as, I've learned over the years, like, I can't come in and start being a professor for a homeowner. So I say, well, voltage is basically the pressure that pushes electricity down a wire. Just like you push water through a hose with pressure, we push electricity through a wire. And they're like, oh. So you give them an example, and there's something there that they've seen before that they can relate to. So they've got this similar datum that they can, say, oh, so water, I turn on the hose, I water the garden. Turn on a switch, electricity gets pushed by the pressure. We measure that pressure in electricity. It's called volts. So we do this, and then when they're out, they can understand it, and then they can also help the customer understand it. And it just allows for this smooth transaction. You multiply that one example by, maybe 200 or 300 terms, and you're in business. Probably the best training you're ever going to get. And it's very simple. But it has to be done.
Well, it sounds like a very common sense approach. I'm curious, have you had some story? Do you have a story of, maybe an electrician who was going to give up, who started with you and thought he just couldn't do it, and you've rescued him with this approach of yours?
Yeah, I mean, we've had lots of guys over the years. Whew. We have one guy now, like we have a couple of guys. One guy's from Ecuador, and he's a great guy, great work ethic, hard worker, very friendly, but he's got a language situation, and it's a real, the thing to realize is, to find out, is that this is a real barrier. It's like when you're moving, this stops you. This word stops you. It's kind of funny to think, but it actually, you give up at this point. You've got many subjects that you gave up on. Well, you had your words in there that you gave up on, and this is the barrier, and the solution is there to be done. You need to get help with these words and get them cleared up in a good dictionary. You can do it yourself, or you can get some help. I mean, that's it. With Fabian, I just really sat him down. And, in order for him to do what I wanted him to do, and I wanted to help him move up from just doing the jobs to actually going out and selling the jobs. And, there was just, he had trouble. So I got with him. We sat down. He didn't know what the word sell means. We cleared up the word sell. Oh, I know what selling is. Good. Tell me the definition. To get the money. Okay, let's look it up. We looked it up, and he's like, selling actually means to help somebody. Oh, it comes from the word to help. It did get changed. That was the older meaning. It got changed about 100 years ago. There's an additional definition, which means betray, which is an interesting situation. Wow. You think of people as, you don't like salesmen. Well, they changed the definition. If you research this and just look, you'll find these answers. They're there. I'm not making it up. You just have to look. And that's why he didn't want to sell. He thought he was hurting people.
Right, exactly. I had a misdefinition, or they had altered it. It's amazing. I think back to times back in my own training. We had histology, which is the study of cells and the anatomy of cells that make up the body. And I remember we had a professor up there who would just rattle off for about an hour. And after the hour, all of us walked out of there looking at each other like, what did he even talk about? We had no clue. We walked out of there in a daze. And I'm sure the viewers, as they're watching this show, probably have similar experiences where maybe they went to some course or they took some education, and they just were totally lost and felt lost on this. So this is great, Brian, that you do that, because you're giving this person back their pride. We have a few minutes left on the show, and I wanted to ask you, because I see you're implementing these technologies. What other technology of Mr. Hubbard do you use in your business or in your life that you found useful?
Yeah, so Mr. Hubbard really did a lot. He developed quite a lot. I didn't know any of this stuff, like how much he did. But the main thing I use is his administrative technology. And it's broken down and related to just business. It's very simple. Like, we use, like, one of the tools in that administrative technology is study technology. And when we say technology, we just mean the application or the use of something, how to do. How do you handle something, And that's it. Like, so study, you use this study technology, and all of a sudden you can get real results from your study. Also, he wrote a lot about sales and how do you sell something, and how do you relate to people, and how do you communicate to people in a way that doesn't violate your own reality, but also allows you to form that connection that you need to help somebody. You can't just help somebody without, having some sort of affinity, like how much you like somebody, and some sort of agreement. Like, you're going to get a contract if you work for me, and there's going to be an agreement, and you're going to sign that. And, now it's my responsibility to deliver that to you. So these are some of the tools. I'd say, there's two basic tools that we use every day. First thing we do is we meet in the morning and we would address these subjects. And we'll spend every day, we'll spend a good hour in the morning, like, going over these things. Not every day. Some days we have pressure. We get so busy because things go so well. Then you got to handle that. So it's an interesting game,
Well, you know what? What I find interesting about what you're saying is there were so many subjects that I've taken in my past training, and really I look at it and I go, I should have gotten more out of it. I did the exams, I received good grades, but I look back upon it and I said, why can't I really apply it? So I think really what you've presented today, Mr. Duffy, is really very useful for the people, the viewers watching out there, even with their own kids, is to realize that, we all have this potential, but it's being blocked by words and concepts that we don't get. And it's amazing because what you presented now, they can just at the end of this show go out, and maybe if they've had a problem with sports, they look up some sporting words, and all of a sudden the guy does better in sport or whatever. So I want to thank you for having been on the show. We've reached the end of the show. If I have another show, can you come back?
Absolutely, yeah. It was a pleasure. Anytime, yeah. Let me know, and if I can help in any way, I'll be here.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you helping us with those electrical tips so we don't get burned or zapped anymore in the house, and how to pick an electrician. And for those of you out there, may you increase your competence and clear up those confusions that before today's show with Mr. Duffy, you thought were just you. And now you've got a new start. So hopefully you have a great weekend, and you look back on this show in the past and go, that's where all changed when that guy from Ireland was on the show. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet